Hi guys, this is the Space Figures lesson, and this is just going to be kind of an introduction to the 3D stuff that we're about to get into. So we are finishing up our two-dimensional, perimeter and area lessons, and we're going to start working on our 3D stuff. So space figures basically are just common three-dimensional figures. Sometimes we call them solid figures, but the figures that we're going to study for this year are going to be prisms, pyramids, cylinders, cones, and spheres. So let's go ahead and get started. Today on your notes, you're going to actually be filling in some of the pieces that are missing in your notes, but then you're also going to be drawing a sketch of the image that you see right here. So go ahead and begin filling in the definition for a prism. So a prism has two parallel bases that are congruent polygons. So here are our bases. This down here is a base, and then this top piece is going to be not only parallel but also congruent, meaning that it's going to be pretty much exactly the same as the one on the bottom. And then a prism is also special because it specifically has faces on the side that are in the shape of rectangles. So you can see that this shape right here is a rectangle. Here's another one, and they go all the way around that image. So at this time you're going to want to go ahead and pause the video and draw your sketch if you have not done so already. Next is our cube. So recall from what you already know that a cube is a rectangular prism. It's just a special prism with 6 congruent square faces. So every single face is a square, and every single face is congruent to another side. So this makes a perfect cube. So there's that front square, and then like I was saying, every single one is going to be exactly congruent to that. So you will, like I said, again, want to go ahead and pause the video so that you can fill in your notes and draw your sketch. Next is our cylinder. So a cylinder has 2 parallel bases that are congruent circles. So very similar to a rectangular prism. Only difference is that the bases are not rectangles, they're circles, and the circles do need to be congruent. And then our sides of our cylinder are simply going to be straight up and down, and they actually create a rectangle, so it makes it kind of simple. And you'll get to start to see these formulas as we work further into our 3D lessons. So go ahead and draw your sketch of a cylinder. Up next is a pyramid. So a pyramid is special because it has a base that is any polygon, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a certain shape on the bottom. But what's really cool is that all of the lateral faces on the sides are triangles that all come to a common point at the top, but every single side is going to be a triangle. So this is what makes a a pyramid so special. So go ahead and pause this so that you can draw your sketch. Next we have a cone. A cone has one circular base at the bottom and one vertex at the top. So not much to describe the cone other than that. One vertex being up here at the top, and then our circular base. And finally we have a sphere, which might be probably, if you ask me, one of the hardest to draw a sketch of. But a sphere is the set of all points in a space that are a given distance from a given point called the center. So you're going to have to kind of know where the center is. but you don't have to draw it if you don't want to. To draw this one, though, you're going to want to draw your outside circle first. And then you're gonna want to go in and draw what looks to be kind of a sideways circle to kind of represent our sphere. Just recalling that you know, they're a certain distance from that center point. Okay. All right, so moving on, now that we've got some basic, you know, sketches and definitions of all the different shapes we're going to be working with, we're going to begin naming some of these figures because I want you to be able to name them correctly. So what you're going to want to do is use the shape of the base to help you name any space figure. So it'll help you if you first look at the base and then try to go from there. So the bases on this figure are actually triangles. So if you look right here, actually let me highlight, it's easier to see. Here is a base, and then down here is its congruent matching base. But both of these bases are triangles. So we're going to fill that in as triangles. And then because it has the shape of rectangles for our sides, we're going to call it a rectangular prism. Prisms have those rectangular sides. And I'm sorry, it's not a rectangular prism. It's a triangular prism. So there's our sides, and the figure is called a triangular prism. Okay, our next one, we are again going to use the shape of the base to help us name the space figure. And I liked this image when I pulled it up because the bases are already highlighted pretty much for you. You can see that each base is a trapezoid. And now comes the more difficult part. Not that it's really hard, but we need to take a look at the sides of this. So the sides are forming a shape of a rectangle. So because we have rectangles as sides, this means again that our shape is some sort of a prism. Because the bases are trapezoids, we're actually going to call this figure a trapezoidal prism. So that name trapezoidal prism is a little bit funky, but that is how you take this base of a trapezoid and turn it into, the name for a prism, trapezoidal prism. I also wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about nets. I know we've worked a little bit with nets already, but what's interesting about a net is that it's actually a two-dimensional image that can be formed into a three-dimensional image if you could take it and fold it. So when we name nets, again, we're actually going to take a look at their bases. So let's start with the base on this one. I've got the base like right here in the center. So if you can figure out the name of that base, it's definitely going to help you be able to name it. And hopefully you guys know that that is a hexagon. And next we're going to want to take a look at the sides. So this side is a little bit different from what we were seeing on our last examples. Our sides are no longer rectangle. These are actually triangles. So whenever we have triangle sides, we're not going to be making a prism, but instead we're going to be making a pyramid. So when we put the two of these together, it's going to be called a hexagonal pyramid. So try saying that a few times. Hexagonal pyramid. Okay, our next net, again, we need to look for our bases, which for this one, they're not quite as obvious as some of the other nets are. But we'll go ahead and identify our bases. So our bases are actually these guys that jet out on the sides. So we have two triangular bases. And our sides are actually, again, in the form of rectangles. So if you recall from earlier, whenever we have rectangles, we actually are creating a prism. So we're going to name this based on its bases. So the prism's name is the triangular prism. Just a couple of things I want you to note before we finish up this pretty quick lesson. A space figure is a three-dimensional figure. So when we have the net all folded up and into a 3D shape that you can actually touch, that is called a space figure. So that's what we are moving into, is we're going to be studying space figures. But a net is just, like I said earlier, a 2D, two-dimensional pattern or picture, you could say, for a 3D figure. So you can use that 2D pattern to actually create that 3D figure if you were to fold it and tape it the correct way. So our two new, not new, but review words that I really want you to focus on for the next few weeks are space figure and net. Remembering that space figure is 3D and net is just 2D. Okay, the last thing that I want to leave you with is actually, of course, your challenge. So I'm not going to help you with this one. Let me see if I can say this correctly. I looked up how to pronounce it. But this is a castle in Germany, and it actually exists. It's very, very popular. The most popular castle that exists in Germany. And I picked it because, well, my Grammy's from Germany, but I also have always thought that it's been very beautiful. But what I want you to do is I want you to pick out the space figures in the Neuschwanstein Castle. So there are quite a few different space figures or, shapes that we've just reviewed. And I want to see if you can pick out some of them. So you're going to kind of draw a tiny sketch, but I want you to kind of list, where it's located. Maybe it's in the background, or maybe it's the top, it's a roof, or maybe it's a column, whatever. But I want you to give me a list of the shapes that you see, and go ahead and bring that up to me when you are ready to move on.